All right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today is actually President's Day, as I'm sure you're probably aware. So the stock market in the US is closed. We'll go through a couple of charts with you today, but ultimately we will be looking out to tomorrow to go through all the TA and continue our live trades, so on and so forth. In the meantime, I've got a little bit of inflation news to show you. I've got a little bit of Bitcoin stuff to show you, a little bit on gold. And then, like I said, we'll go through a couple of charts. So that sounds like something you're interested in. Sit back, relax, hit that like button, and let's get into this. The price of eggs continues to soar. Eggs here is in the black, as you can see. So it just goes straight up. Does that mean eggs are soon going to be removed from the CPI basket? Because, of course, they can't have real inflation revealed to the public. Speaking of real inflation being revealed to the public, okay, check this out. I love this. Instead of comparing monthly CPI year over year, let's look at it on a longer term 5-year basis. The bottom line is your purchasing power is down 20% and not getting any better despite the BS you're being fed that inflation is currently dropping. So what does it look like in the real world? Well, here, as you can see, when you compare it over a 5-year basis, as per this right column here, 5-year change in monthly CPI, you can see inflation just continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So it just goes to show that all of this macro stuff can essentially go straight out the window, and the people that are the best at reading the charts, the people that are the best at TA, are the ones that are going to benefit from this type of market. How can you do accurate macro analysis when all the data is entirely fake? Over in the world of Bitcoin and freedom, okay, peer-to-peer private chat group plus Nostra social feed is coming soon to mobile via the Impervious chat. You can import your NPub or generate a new one to replace WhatsApp with a secure peer-to-peer alternative. No phone number or email required, no data collection from the likes of these sorts of companies. You get to control your own private and public communications, all on Impervious chat. So if you don't know what Impervious is, I've actually made a video on this called Impervious plus Bitcoin equals freedom. Here it is, so you can go and check that out in your own time. But either way, I believe this is going to be the future. This is all built on Bitcoin. And the important thing to point out here is that there are 625 Nostra profiles today. That's up 5x from 108k just a month ago. Not only are these new Nostra users, but these are also Lightning users as well. Remember, all of this stuff is Lightning native. The Impervious browser is Lightning native, and so is Nostra. So it won't be long before we have millions of people across the world stacking sats for sharing great content on Nostra. Lightning and Bitcoin continues to scale. Amazing things continue to get built on top of Bitcoin, like this layer 3 solution, Impervious. Like I said, if you haven't seen Impervious, if you're unfamiliar with Impervious, then go and check out this video. I did the work so you don't have to. Bitcoin looks really good, technically speaking, as well. Look at this. Bitcoin is ready for the next leg up. So you can see in 2019, we did this Adam and Eve double bottom, neckline break. We then consolidated in like a rising channel formation, which typically would break to the downside. It would be more bearish biased. But in Bitcoin's case, not so much. It does the opposite. It explodes to the upside. We get to this level 2 consolidation, and then we get an even bigger and more volatile version of this, where we break to the upside once more. Fast forward to today and look at 2023, and you can see we've had the Adam and Eve double bottom, we've had a neckline break. We are now putting in level 1, looking to emerge out the top of this. If we can do that, that sets up a run to $30,000+ within the next 30 to 40 days. Speaking of Bitcoin, did you know the next halving is just 402 days away? It's just over a year now until Bitcoin becomes, and this is the most critical part of all of this, it becomes the hardest form of currency on the planet. Its inflation rate is currently ever so slightly above gold's. But after Bitcoin undergoes its halving, its inflation rate will drop to almost half that of gold's. It will be the hardest form of money on the planet. Not to mention, remember, as the block reward is halved, the amount of sell-side pressure from the miners will have halved. Of course, when you have increased demand and half the amount of sell-side pressure from the miners, we can expect upside to follow from the halving. Did you know El Salvador has opened a Bitcoin embassy in both Lugano, Switzerland and Texas, USA? Soon, every country will have a Bitcoin embassy. Again, massive, massive, massive signs of development and adoption on a global stage for Bitcoin. This thing continues to impress me, and I do this every single day. Look at this Kitco gold survey. If 76% are bearish, isn't that actually bullish? Well, I would argue we're getting there. I'd like to see 80%. I'm sure we're going to see a turnaround in the metals market. I'll get to the charts in just a minute, but I do think a little bit more patience is likely needed first. This is the kind of sentiment I was looking to see, though, as I've been talking about for a while on this channel. Once we were up at the top of the local top for gold and silver, I was saying that we were seeing these targets for 3K gold, we were seeing calls for 3K gold, we were seeing YouTube influencers that don't show you their positions come out and say they were buying gold and silver, and of course the price had to spill from there. Now the sentiment is finally turning. It's becoming more bearish. As you can see, it's actually quite heavily bearish. And as I said all along, we will see the laggards that were late to the metal trade get punished. This would suggest to me that we are close to finishing the punishment of the laggards, and therefore the market can turn and target the top of that range. We'll get to the charts in just a minute. One last thing to point out is China's gold imports increased by 64% year over year last year, the highest level since 2018. China and other central banks are buying gold for a reason. And of course, that reason is they know the fiat currencies are on borrowed time. They know the end of this fiat currency cycle is closer than most people thought was possible. So likely a low volume day. The US stock market's not open, as I said, because it's President's Day. You can see the dollar. This looks to me like it's not quite finished running yet. It probably has to at least come and test this high at 105-ish, and then I think it will roll over. But of course, I'm open to just seeing this roll over sooner than that. I think this has a maximum height of around 107, 108 before it gets rejected and continues its leg down. But that, of course, remains to be seen. The UK stock market still looks pretty healthy, doesn't it? So still pushing up, long and strong continue to push. Not much more to say about that, apart from lose this red upwards open support line, and it's time to not only close the long, but flip short as well. Potential swing low and start of a new cycle here for gold, but I think likely I want to see like a bit more structure set up. Now, if I clean this chart up a little bit, if I get rid of this yellow line here, and I move this trend line, we could probably argue that there's some sort of setup here. But I don't like the angle of that. It's just far too steep. The other thing we could say is we could potentially draw it like this and connect those highs. Now, this would be a high risk, high reward because there's a good chance that this will fail. So I would prefer to see some sort of rally up that then fails and then comes back down. And then we can line the trend line up with that failed high, that local high. So that's what I'm going to be paying patient for. I'm going to be looking out for something like that. So I'm still sat on the sides. Silver looks a bit more encouraging. Get rid of this yellow line here. You can see that we could do the same sort of thing, right? We could pull this over here and say maybe this is broken out, but I don't like that. It's just so steep that this has such a high probability of failure that I'm not really interested in that. The other thing we could do is similarly to gold is draw it this way and say maybe it's broken out, and that is a valid trade with the stop below this low here. But for me, it's just got too high of a failure rate. So I'm going to hope that what we can see is some kind of rally up and rejection. And then we can say, okay, now we've got a more reasonable angle of attack and wait for a breakout of that. So it does mean that occasionally this, this could just go something like this, and then in which case we'll look for a different entry. But it's about high probability setups for me rather than just stabbing in the dark. So a little bit more patience, but I do think it's going to be rewarded. Bitcoin showing relative strength continues to push up, as you can see here. This to me looks really, really good. Now, we know there's a cycle low coming up in around 8 days. Remember, the 60-day cycle window is plus or minus 10%, so that remains to be seen. If I hop into a couple of other Bitcoin charts, things start to get really interesting. If I flip this onto log so we can see what's going on. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. This suggests we'll be at 30K tomorrow, 28K tomorrow, and 30K a couple of days after. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen, and if you've been watching the channel, you'll know that I kind of just put this fractal here because it seemed outrageous, but I said I wouldn't be surprised to see it play out. And although I don't trade off of it, although I don't give it any weight, there is no denying when you look at this two overlays, when you look at the current price and the green fractal, this is repeating exactly, almost exactly what we did coming out of the 2018 bear market, which was this rally here, okay? Coming from here and up to 14K for the first time. That seems to be what we're doing. So again, I don't trade off of this. This is the chart I trade off. If you're unfamiliar with the channel, this is what I use. I use the break above this blue line here. I use the cycles to tell me when to add to positions, when to move stops up, when to check for early warning signs and breakdowns. But there's no denying when you flip this, when you look at this, there's no denying that this kind of looks insanely bullish to me. This tells me that we're going to be at 30K this week, which no one would have thought. It also tells me that this will likely end up being the cycle low somewhere around here, which means we'll get to pull the stop all the way from down here to up here, ready to go again. So this is a very exciting look. Now, it does not mean, of course, it doesn't mean that we can't just roll over any day now and put in the cycle low at the end of the month. And that cycle low could come all the way down sub 20K. That's perfectly reasonable to me. But I'm open to anything, but to me, this looks very, very encouraging at the moment. I really, really like what I'm seeing out of the Bitcoin price. And I'm sure you are too, unless you were one of the people that was down here praying for a 10K or a 12K one last dip type of deal. But hopefully you're in, hopefully you're long and strong like I am, and hopefully you're enjoying this, because this just didn't seem reasonable when I drew it back here. But now look at it, it seems amazing. So I'm really happy with that. And one last Bitcoin chart to hop into is, look at this Wyckoff accumulation. Okay, here it is. Are we or are we not just about to break out above here and start phasey? So this is more confluence for me. This seems like a really, really textbook example. It seems like we are doing this last point of support, the sign of strength and the breakout into phase E. That seems like what's happening to me. I really like the look of this. Hopping into a couple of other cryptos. Look, Ethereum showing strength as well. Ethereum looking to break out, so I like to see that. XRP, we're still sat on the sidelines, but I'm sure when that goes, it's going to be phenomenal. MATIC at $1.50 right now. So again, really, really nice to see. Long and strong continue to push. And Zcash on a 50 handle. Look at Zcash go. We can't say, how long has I been in this trade? We've been in this trade since all the way back here. 90 odd days. 90 days of doing absolutely nothing. And Zcash finally looks like it wants higher. So I would think if this is going to get going, we'll be close to $70 to $85 in the not too distant future. So anyway, as you can see here, longer term account and a trade position at the same time. We'll see how this goes. I have a video on Zcash if you're interested. You can go and check that out. And so that's all I have to say today. So far, everything looks pretty constructive to me. The melt up seems to be playing out. Still a lot of work to do if I hop into this melt up chart here, as you can see, but we're still above the breakout line. We're still targeting much higher numbers. Remember, the target is all the way up here. So is this going to be validated? Is this going to be invalidated this week? Is the stock market going to roll over? I don't think so. I think the cryptocurrency market is telling us that risk is coming on. There's plenty of liquidity in the system, and we could probably expect to see higher numbers from the US equities over the coming week or two. Need to see that dollar and the yields come off. That's something we'll be looking out for this week. In the meantime, enjoy President's Day. Hope you're doing well in life. Take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.